Welcome back, Trinidad Tobago. I'm Hema Ramkissoon. Thanks again for staying with us, and thank you for inviting us into your homes. Joining us on set now, a former head of the FIU. Now, yesterday there was an article in one of the daily newspapers, dirty, dirty money, over 600 million in circulation and counting, and that was the count from 2011 to, I think, 2010 to 2011. And interesting, there was a spike, almost double, in terms of the value of money in 2010 was $263 reported in... or red flagged in terms of suspicious activities. Now in 2011, looking at what occurred in 2011, that figure rose to 569 million. Now, where are we and what does it mean? Where are we going? Joining us on set now, former head of the FIU. There was an article in the newspaper which I think raised a number of questions this morning. Good morning, David West. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, Hema.
Dirty money transactions have reportedly passed through our country's financial system. According to the 2012 report on the FIU of Trinidad and Tobago, over 600 million in alleged dirty money. Who's washing it? Where is it getting cleaned? That would have been my first question.
Well, I'm not sure who's washing it and where it's being cleaned, but the point is, though, is that we do have $638 million of dirty money or suspicious transaction reports in Trinidad and Tobago, which is an increase from 2010, 2011, 2012. So the suspicious transaction reports are increasing in value terms.
And now we're looking, and that would have been the other question, because I pointed that out to you yesterday when we spoke, that according to the article, in 2010, there were 111 suspicious activities, while in 2011, there were 303, and we don't know where it is for 2012. And we're also looking at the value. So 263 million was red flagged in 2010. In 2011, 569 million. What occurred in 2010, 2011, and moving forward? Why are we seeing that this... We're not talking about $1 million or $2 million. We're looking at a system where I think almost you can... If we're going according to this trend, 600 million, and if that was double from the year before, are we looking at close to $1 billion floating around in dirty money?
Well, let me explain. What happened in 2010 was in March 2010 was when the FIU was first established, and that was when the FATF asked us to establish FIU. And so that is when reporting would have first started in Trinidad. So the banks and the financial institutions and the other entities, supervised entities, were not too familiar. Mm-hmm. So the banks had the lion's share of reports, which in 2010 would have been 58 out of the 111. What happened was, with the FIU continuing doing their work, more entities would have been aware of the transactions and what their reporting conditions were. So that is why the spike from 2010 to 2011 would have been became aware.
Right. Now, we're more aware of what we're looking for. So clearly, the better we get at detecting or making something on the red list or suspicious list. But you have only one person before the courts, and we're looking at $600 million, and I think I can safely say it's close to $1 billion now if we're going according to the trend.
Yeah, well, that is where I like to focus in that FIU gathers their intelligence, okay, and then they pass the intelligence reports on to the FIB, the Financial Investigations Bureau, okay. Now that is where I feel that there's a gap in the successful prosecution, because we need the FIB to take those reports and investigate and prosecute. That is what we need. That is, the FIU is doing their work. But it's the FIB, I feel, that needs a little more beefing up.
Is there no political will to solve this problem? If you're telling me from 2010, we're now in 2013, 3 months into 2013. We are at a stage of war in this country against criminal elements, Faris al-Rawi, and everyone is aware. We all know the infamous line, big fish, little fish in an ocean of lies. The people who are getting killed on the ground are not the people that really are the high rulers in the criminal world.
That's correct, and that's why we have to increase the FIB. They need to be beefed up. And, you know, the government with their crime plan and the use of the soldiers, we have enough legislation on the books. It's just you need to beef up the institution. The DPP's office needs more attorneys. They need more assistants. You have a police service who needs, you know, more cars, better detection. So we have the institutions. It's just better running of the institutions.
Better running of the institutions, but I have to... Why are we not seeing this happening? If we're in the middle of a war, one would assume the quickest way to stop the drug trade or to stop the flow of blood as it relates to crime would be to stop the flow of money. All of it is all linked to money.
It is, and you're correct. But as I said, you know, the FIU is doing their job, and they're passing their work on to the FIB to do their job. And the FIB is not sending anything off to the DPP to prosecute.
How many cases have been sent from the FIB to the DPP's office?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not there, so I can't.
When you were there, in terms of actually sending it?
I don't know.
So we're looking at only one case that's currently before the courts. And I don't mean to sound facetious, but if you tell me Vicky Boudram is the hallmark of your success, I don't know whether I feel assured in any possible way. Someone who's accused of scamming people for a boat ride, and we're looking at a war against crime, really.
Yes, you're correct. And we have to, that's why you have to dig deep and you have to ask the questions. Why aren't, you know, what is the strength of the investigation unit in the FIB? How many officers work there? What are their skill sets? You know, have they been trained properly? You know, it's a secret institution where we don't know anything is happening and nothing is coming out of it.
Nothing is coming out of it. Over 600 million in dirty money reported in the system in 2011 alone. If we look at the trend, one would assume it's close to $1 billion. As we fight crime, are we really doing enough? The FIU is doing its part. What happens after that? Is it falling out of a system? Is there political will to go after what we call money laundering? We're going to go to the 7 o'clock newscast. I'll see you on the next side. Welcome back to Trinidad Tobago. Dirty money, who's washing, what's happening to the investigation? We're in the middle of a war against the criminal elements in this country. According to a report, over 600 million in 2012 alone. If we move into 2013 and 2011, looking at the figures, where are we? Mr. West, you can read any international reports on money laundering and on suspicious activities, and you know the industries, which it's pretty prevalent. You know it's construction, you know it's retail outlets, you know what type of retail, you know typically the supermarket, the groceries. People are fully aware. You can read any book, any one-on-one basic book, and understand that these are the industries you should be looking at. So obviously the red flags are coming up, so people are fully aware of what they're looking at.
Yes.
I still can't understand, is there no political will to solve it? And I don't, why?
Why? Well, what has happened is that the FIU is only formed in 2010.
Right.
Okay, and we're 3 years into the FIU and the systems, and we are now off the enhanced reporting list. So I know the time is now and we need to see prosecutions, we need to see proper investigations. But maybe there are suspicious transaction reports in the pipeline that are coming to fruition. I don't know. We don't know because it's all very secret. But clearly, if we are to pass the mutual evaluation, the 4th round mutual evaluation in 2014, we need to see prosecutions. And the FATF have stressed that they're no longer looking for all the laws on the books, because we have that now. All the countries have the laws on the books. Now they want to see prosecutions.
Are we running? I know that was a couple of years ago. We ran the risk of being in the blacklist, the grey list, various shades of grey.
Yeah.
But if we're now looking at the prosecutions and we're now looking at where we are, there is an underlying sentiment that there's no political will to go after.
Yes.
The cases in Jamaica are well documented with the underworld figures, the political directorates. I don't know whether we can say the same for here, but when you see no convictions and yet the money stream of certain suspicious activities continue to multiply while the poor man is starving, one can only come to two conclusions.
Well, you see, even in Jamaica, they have convictions for money laundering. St. Vincent recently had a case, conviction for money laundering. Grenada had a case, conviction for money laundering. You know, Trinidad, as the financial hub of the Caribbean, is what we want to say we are. We have no convictions for money laundering. I mean, clearly, we need to put things in place. We need to get, Jamaica will give us assistance. The British will give us assistance. The Americans will give us assistance. We have the people that will help us. I don't know why we're not accepting it.
The unit was moved. Is it now under the AG's office or it's now under the police? Where is it?
No, the FIB is under the police.
Right.
The FIU is under the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting when I put up on my Facebook that you were coming. People said that I should ask why the unit was moved, and do you think that was it moved from one jurisdiction to the other, and what caused that move? Was
the unit was never moved. The unit was always housed in the Ministry of Finance, and it's still there.
Should it be moved?
It should be under the Ministry of National Security, in my view, because under the Minister of National Security is the prime contact for the Financial Action Task Force. So therefore, the link should be from the FATF to the Ministry of National Security, the FIU. But also, too, the line minister for the FIB is the Minister of National Security. So therefore, it just makes sense for it to be under the Ministry of National Security.
This all seems like a muddled situation to me. Why are we using so many cross lines?
Because I think it wasn't well thought out. It was rushed. We have an administrative type FIU where I am advocating for a law enforcement type FIU where we have the police, all immigration, customs, all housed in one building. So we could just quickly pull up the phone and say, can you check on Mr. So and so? And then we will get an answer. Instead of sending a letter asking for the FIB to respond, they take weeks to respond. And that's the delays. Under the old system where they had the counter-drug crime, or counter-drug action task force under Mr. Sukram, they had no legislation, but it was working because I was in the Attorney General's office.
Right.
And I used to get mutual assistance requests for information about people, entities in Trinidad. And it worked smoothly. It worked fine. It worked well. They had prosecutions. Okay? I mean, you had the Piaco matter came out of that. Okay? So you see, it was working, and I don't know why they changed the system.
When was it changed? In 2010?
In 2010, yes.
The system was changed in 2010. We're looking at a system that was working. If it's not broken, why fix it? So we'll take a very short break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. Dirty money, who's washing, who's benefiting, and where are we going? 600 million reported in 2011 loan. We have to go by the trend because that figure almost doubled from the year before. Where are we now? Dirty money, who's washing it in the system? Who's reporting it? Mr. West, you are a former head of the FIU. Obviously, a report was issued. What are some of the trends? What are some of the things that would raise red flags in your mind?
Okay. In 2012, we see that the banking sector is the lion's share of making reports to the FIU with 154 suspicious transaction reports. I would like to see in the document what region of Trinidad and Tobago those reports came from. Was it from the north, south, central, east, or west? Because it would give an idea to the FIB, you know, where to focus the investigation. Coming down to the supervised entities, the attorneys' money value transfers like Western Union, for example, and real estate agents, they all reduced in suspicious transaction reports. Now, if you put the dots together, money, people like Western Union, people send down money,
right,
could be dirty money, for people to purchase properties, and for attorneys, who they call the gatekeepers, to do the conveyancing contracts. Mm. So there's a link with a reduction in 2012 with the where the money could be laundered from attorneys, Western Union, real estate agents. And in 2012, you had no reports of suspicious transaction reports, zero. Okay, out of $600 million, there's no reports of real estate agents. And if you look at the real estate market in Trinidad,
it's booming.
Exactly.
It's booming.
Exactly. And why hasn't any estate agent filed a suspicious transaction report? Questions must be asked. You have to, you know, they have the online on-site visits by the FIU have to be more rigorous.
Now, looking at that, and I made the comment that you can read any book one-on-one on money laundering, or even any of the books of the infamous dons in the world, and you understand the areas that they constantly look at, even when the FBI do their investigations. Back in the day in the 1980s, and they investigated the mafia, they looked at real estate transactions, retail outlets, food, and grocery outlets, all at the top list in terms of high turnover of money.
And you pinpoint a good point in like groceries, supermarkets, but they are not yet under the, they don't have to report to the FIU. Because they don't. It's not.
Explain that to me, because I read the report on that U.S. gangster that was taken on in the 1980s, and he had a number of retail outlets, specifically grocery marts, and that's how they were able to track his money.
Yeah. Well, what happens is that under the FATF have only outlined certain entities to report. They have not. I mean, it's all changing, but they have not listed supermarkets as a reporting entity.
Does that bother you?
Of course it does. But I mean, but we in Trinidad, we are so small. What can we do?
We are so small, but we're looking at almost $1 billion in dirty money. So that can't be so small, David West.
I know, but we don't know if supermarkets are laundering money because they don't have to report.
Okay.
You know,
so what are the entities that do have to report?
We have the cooperative societies, credit unions, the motor vehicle sales, the postal service, real estate agents, casinos, attorneys, accountants. Those kind of people have to have to report.
So that list was created in 2010?
Yes, by the FATF.
Right. Now in 2013, we're dealing obviously with a different kind of situation. We're seeing the quantity of money being circulated. Would you not say that that list should include other entities, and who would you advise to be on that list?
Well, I mean, supermarkets, I would say so. I would say the bars. Restaurants, for example, should be on the list. But again, it's up to the FIU and to make their decision on who they want to look at also.
If I were the FIU this morning, I would be a little worried if I see that in 2010, we're looking at about 200 million in transactions, and in 2011, 600 million in transactions. Obviously, something is happening in the system. There's a gap.
Right, but don't forget, the FIU is financial intelligence. They are just gathering intelligence to pass on. Okay, so they are doing their job. So
then I point the finger at blame to the police service and say that clearly you're not investigating it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Unfortunately, the police are not investigating fast enough and coming to prosecutions. We need prosecutions in Trinidad and Tobago. If we don't have any prosecutions, we run the chance of coming back on to the grey list. Because prosecutions is what the FATF is looking at now in the 4th round mutual evaluation.
Do you know if people are trained to investigate this? You know, in the FBI, when they're investigating, it's funny, everyone knows of the famous gangster in Chicago that was brought down with taxes, and looking at that. I mean, we all know him, killed so many people, but Al Capone was brought down by taxes, and everybody's aware of that. So you must have certain trained personnel to assist police in their investigations. Do they have the resources?
Well, I know when I was in FIU, the FIU personnel were trained. The FIB, I don't know who is in the FIB. I know that that person was there, but he was subsequently, he's not there anymore. So I don't know the level of experience and expertise that they have in the FIB. I just don't know. I know Mr. Richardson is the head of the FIB, Deputy Commissioner Richardson, but I don't know if he has had any training in it. Well, I don't know I don't know.
When we're questioning the ability of a Deputy Police Commissioner to handle our task given to him, don't you think we're in a sad state?
Well, I think he is more of a, he's running the department as a head, but not as an analytical head, but just as more of an administrative head. You know.
Now, detecting money and detecting the flow of money is obviously a very tricky, long investigative process. Do you think we're being a little harsh on the FIU at this time? Or should I say, let me just tell the FIU and the FIB, both heads should step down and give it back, give it a new entity under the Ministry of National Security?
No, I don't think so at all. In terms of the FIU, as I said before, they are doing their job. They're making reports, and they're showing the country, listen, money laundering suspicious transaction reports are on the increase.
Suspicious transactions.
I think what they should do is get more involved. And I know that they have these lines, but they need to get more involved to see what the FIB is doing, to see if the FIB, for example, the reports that go across to the FIB, are they not enough? Do they want more? Do they not understand it? There needs to be meetings with these people so they can decide what they want or what they don't want to assist them in getting better investigation.
David West, do you think we're really serious about solving this problem? We're in the middle of a war against the criminal elements in this country, yet everyone has clamored. We've heard the term big fish so many times. Even Faris Al-Rawi always talks about big fish, little fish in an ocean of lies. But we look at the real heads and the real white-collar crime. Everyone knows it's automatic.
If the government wants to get a handle on the crime, what we've been going through now, white-collar crime, money laundering is a way to go, is a way to arrest it. Because once you take away someone's money, They can't do anything. Okay, they can't give the money to the people on the streets to buy the guns, to buy the drugs. Take away their money. Confiscation. When last time we had somebody's assets been confiscated?
Now people are under investigation here, and they just run like their business is being run like normal.
Exactly. You confiscate the money, you take away the money, you hurt them. That is the only way. Do you know civil asset forfeiture? This is non-conviction based. So you don't need a conviction to seize someone's assets. You can just say they have reasonable cause to suspect that X is laundering money, and you seize the assets.
I've always wondered about that, because even when Alan Stanford was being investigated, every single dollar that he owned was frozen. Yet people are being investigated, linked to criminal activity in this country. Police have put them under suspicious, but yet their billion-dollar businesses continue to boom. What does that tell you about us as a nation?
Exactly, because we're not serious. Okay, we have to move to civil asset forfeiture, which has been in other countries. I mean, St. Lucia has it, Grenada has it, St. Vincent has it. All the other islands have civil asset forfeiture. England has it, the US has it. Why can't we have it? That is such a strong piece of legislation that we just are not, instead of...
So no one has ever considered doing it?
No. And I have spoken to both governments on this. You know, this is what you need, this is the direction you need to go to. Instead of putting soldiers with powers, police, take away their money. You know, if you take away their money, you can't do anything.
White-collar crime, over $600 million. And if we had to go at the trend, almost $1 billion in suspicious transactions. The list in terms of those required to report is quite limited. Looking at where we are now in the middle of a war, is it time to really relook who has to report? David West saying maybe groceries, supermarkets, bars, restaurants. Those are the obvious lists. I think in the US you can read any book on white-collar crime and understand where most of the transactions take place. Also talking about the investigative power of the police. 10 seconds, your closing comments, Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I would just like to see the government focus on the FIB and beef it up. Even if you have to bring in somebody to give them the assistance, let's do that. White-collar crime is on the increase. We need to arrest it as soon as possible. The figure is huge. It has to come down, and we need to enforce legislation.
Comparing ourselves to other islands in the Caribbean as it relates to white-collar crime and the 600 million that we're looking at, where are we?
Well, in terms of suspicious transaction reports, we are very high up. In terms of detection and prosecution, we are low down. I think we must be last on the list.
One of the highest in terms of suspicious transactions, one of the lowest in terms of detection. In the middle of this war against crime, one can only wonder what's happening. We take a very short break. When we come back, we'll have more for you. Stay with us.